Quiz of Ice and Fire. Hello there, listeners. Thanks for tuning in today for another Quiz of Ice and Fire. I'm Lady Guinevere, and I'm bringing you our 16th quiz. And as always, thanks to our generous patrons for their continued support, which has unlocked this bonus feature for everyone. And speaking of unlocking features, I want to mention that thanks to our patrons helping us meet our goals, we've just released our second patron-exclusive episode all about the Arthurian influences in A Song of Ice and Fire. And so if you're interested in that, or in our other patron-exclusive episode on the Varamir prologue, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Radio Westeros to find out how you can join us and gain access to 2 bonus episodes, among other perks of being a supporter. And now I'm happy to welcome our guest hosts for this quiz. Returning to our airwaves once again, Jeff, otherwise known as Brendan Beefish, and joining us for the first time, Emmett, otherwise known as Poor Quentin, collectively hosts of the NotaCast podcast, a weekly chapter-by-chapter, A Song of Ice and Fire reread. Welcome back, Jeff, and welcome to Radio Westeros, Emmett.
Hey, everyone. It's been a while since I've gotten to chat with you guys. I think the last one we did, was it Aegon or was it the Battle of Fire? I can't remember which one it was, but it was a good 3 years now, I think, since we last did our last record episode together.
It has been a while. I think it was Aegon.
Okay.
That one came a little bit after Battle of Fire.
I think you're right, yeah.
I am not maybe the best the best archivist here, but yeah, no, it has been quite a while, and so we're delighted to have you back. And of course, you have moved on to hosting your own podcast with Emmett, Poor Quentin.
My husband, yes.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan, exactly, Jeff's husband. I'm a big fan of Radio Westeros and your guys' just theory crafting and work in the community in general. So I'm happy to be here and to catch up with Jeff because we're in eternal competition that will never end.
You know, it's kind of funny. We were really lucky to have you guys that kind of blazed the path before us. We always, Emma and I have said this before about a few other folks that we've interacted with in the past. We feel like us, as we're doing our podcast now, we're in our second year, right? We're in our second year, right? We're in our year 2 that we feel like we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And, you know, we feel like you guys and some of our other friends at History of Westeros and other podcasts, Boiled Leather Audio Hour, and other ones that I'm not mentioning off the top of my head right now. We do feel like we're standing on the shoulder of giants, and you guys are among the tallest of the giants that we get to, whose shoulders, whose lovely, well-developed shoulders, muscular shoulders, we stand on every single week when we do our podcast. So thanks for having us on. It's a blast to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's get started with this episode. If you folks listening are keeping score, now's the time to get your pen and paper, or however you keep track, handy. We've got 15 questions as usual. Today's topic, which goes along with the series of regular episodes that we've just completed, is Duncan Egg. So all the answers can be found in those 3 stories. So brush up on your Duncan Egg. Pause right now if you have to and brush up on Duncan Egg. Hopefully you've listened to the episodes and it's all relatively fresh in your mind. Get ready. Let's see how many you can score. Remember that we love to hear your scores across social media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, wherever you reach us regularly. Let us know. And let's get started now. We're going to go over to you, Jeff, for question 1.
All right. Our first question is, who captured Dunk's eye and earned a permanent place in his thoughts and memories with a puppet show that led to the major conflict in the Hedge Knight?
Yes, so who is that puppeteer from the Hedge Knight, forever in Dunk's thoughts? On to question 2. What is the name of the ancient seat of House Osprey, which has been in the hands of House Weber since shortly after Aegon's conquest? This castle takes its name from the feature that provides its best defense.
Yes, this castle is prominently featured in the second Duncan Egg story, The Sworn Sword. So what's the name of that castle? Question number...
Is it Quaithe? Quaithe?
Yes.
Is that the castle's
Castle's name is Quaithe. Jeff, you're not supposed to reveal these things.
Damn it!
Breaking the rules already. Question number 3. What Hedge Knight bore a snail upon his shield and defeated Duncan the White Wall's tourney, later revealing that he had been paid by someone to kill him, but had failed intentionally because the offered price wasn't enough?
That's a good question. I know the answer because I'm looking at it in the document, but I don't think I would be able to get this one just off the top of my head. You know, being a hashtag expert in A Song of Ice and Fire, you know, I don't think I could get this question necessarily. I'm also not fantastic at trivia, so don't slight me for your trivia quiz team if you end up doing a Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire trivia night, because you would fail.
Fake fan.
Fake fan. That's right. That's me, the fakest of fans. So our fourth question is: the Hedge Knight, who appeared at White Walls and mysteriously vanished just before the royal army showed up to break up the party, may have been more than he appeared. For half a point each, the name he went by at the wedding and his possible true identity. This is Quaithe again, right, Emmett? If I'm not mistaken, the answer to this is Quaithe.
It's always going to be Quaithe, okay, Jeff.
Good.
But, you know, that's for them to figure out.
Okay, good, excellent.
Thanks for ruining all the questions, Jeff.
It's what we do best.
Okay, so a hedge knight with a secret identity from the Mystery Knight who vanished right before the army showed up. Okay. Question 5. Over the course of 3 stories, we see Duncan Egg riding a number of different horses and a donkey for half a point each. Give us the names of 2 of their mounts.
You know, I think Chloe and Eliana from Girls Gone Canon would do great at this because their Patreon tiers are named after
I thought of
horses.
them when we wrote that. So
I think they would get extra credit on this particular question. So for half a point each, get 2 of those multiple mounts over the course of Duncan Egg. Question number 6. This town, which appears in Arya's POV in the main series, as well as having a prominent role in the history of Robert's Rebellion, is the setting for the opening scene of the Mystery Knight, where Duncan Egg see the head of a hunchbacked septon who had been preaching against Bloodraven on a spike.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be an interesting question. So you're looking for that town that the hunchback septon had been beheaded and whose head was placed on a spike by Bloodraven. Nice guy there. And our 7th question is: what is the location in the Reach that Dunk travels to in the Hedge Knight to take part in a young maid's name day tourney? So what is that location? It's not Quaithe this time. So you have to come up with a different guess.
no, I'm not sure if we can fit Quaithe into these location ones.
We could.
I don't know how that works. Maybe. Okay, so the basically the location of the tourney in the Hedge Knight. Now, question 8 is a castle famed for its walls of white stone imported from the Vale and weirwood beams in its roof, which was built using its owner's fortune made from cows. What is the name of this castle?
I feel like there's an edgy joke to be made in owner's fortune made from cows, like the name of it is McDonald's, but I'm not quite clever enough to turn that into an actual joke, so I'll just leave the components of the joke there for you to enjoy. Exactly. If you can actually craft a joke out of that, please let us know. But yes, what is the name of that castle crafted from white stone from the Vale and weirwood beams in the roof? On to our 9th question. Which Targaryen prince assaulted a puppeteer, setting into motion the climactic trial of the Hedge Knight?
This is every one of these quiz episodes has what we call the softball, and this might be it.
Yes, that I believe it is the softball of this quiz. So our 10th question is: in the Mystery Knight, Lord Butterwell proudly displays his family's dragon egg until it disappears the morning after his wedding. Near the end of the story, Dunk figures out who stole it and how. For half a point each, who stole the egg? And how did they enter Lord Butterwell's heavily guarded chamber? Now, this one is interesting because you're going to have to read some of the subtext from the Mystery Knight to kind of get at least half of the answer, although it is made relatively clear at the end of the story. So that's your hint, I guess.
It's question 11. This lovely lady's temperament is as fiery as her hair, while she is as diminutive as Dunk is tall. At the end of the Sword, Dunk takes a souvenir to remember her by. What is her name?
Clearly it's Egret. I don't know why this is up for debate. The description seems pretty plain to me. But no, within the context of Duncan Egg, who is the character being described here? On to our 12th question. One of the first characters we see in the Hedge Knight, this brown-haired lordling passed out in a puddle of wine soon turns out to be more than he appeared. What is his true identity? I think this one's probably me, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Brown-haired lordling, that's you?
Passed out in a puddle of wine.
Puddle of wine. So. Yes.
Oh, okay, that part, yeah. So that is another, I would say that's another kind of gimme, so you have to read about 6 paragraphs into the Hedge Knight to find out the answer to that one. Our 13th question is, what future career path is heavily foreshadowed in Sir Duncan's story as related in the stories we have to date?
Okay, so however you figure it out, what is the future career path of Sir Duncan the Tall? Question 14, what is the stated destination of Duncan Egg at the end of the Sworn Sword, kind of beginning of the Mystery Night? Where do they say they're going?
This is what we're waiting for along the lines of waiting for the Winds of Winter in the main cast. What's this next big story going to be for Duncan Egg that we will hopefully one day see? Where are they going? And finally here, question number 15. Sir Eustace Osprey spends some time reminiscing about the past glories of his house. What is the name of the member of House Osprey who famously turned back in invading a Lannister army at the border of the Reach? He's referred to by his full name and a nickname. We'll accept either.
Ha! Okay, so you thought we were going easy on you with those other questions, but here we go. You got 2 chances to come up with this guy's name. And that was question 15. So we are going to take a brief break, and we'll be back in just a minute with your answers. And we're back. And once again, we will go over to Jeff. We're going to repeat the questions and give you the answers. So over to you, Jeff.
All right, so who captured Dunk's eye and earned a permanent place in his thoughts and memories with a puppet show that led to a major conflict in the Hedge Knight? If you guessed Quaithe, you're wrong. The answer is actually Tanselle Too-Tall. Remember her, Tanselle Too-Tall, the puppeteer?
Yep, that's Tanselle Too-Tall. When Dunk arrived at the Silk Town at Ashford Meadow, he found that there were puppeteers there among the many entertainers. And here is his first glimpse of the girl Tanselle. It says, as he ate, he watched the painted wooden dragon knight battle a painted wooden dragon. The puppeteer who worked the dragon was good to watch, too. A tall drink of water with the olive skin and black hair of Dorne. Oh, Tanselle, he just sweet on her right from the start, and we weren't kidding when we said he's got her always in his thoughts. So, question 2, we recall, had to do with the ancient seat of House Osprey, which unfortunately has been in the hands of House Weber since shortly after Aegon's conquest. And the castle, of course, is the site of much of the action in the Sworn Sword, is Coldmoat.
In the Sworn Sword, Sir Eustace Augury tells Dunk about the history of his house and how the castle ended up in the hands of its current owners, House Weber. After the Field of Fire, Highgarden passed from kings to stewards, and the Ospreys dwindled and diminished. 'Twas Aegon's son, King Maegor, who took Coldmoat from us, when Lord Ormond Osprey spoke out against the suppression of the stars and swords, as the poor fellows and the warriors' sons were called. There was a lion carved into the stone above the gates of Coldmoat. My father showed it to me the first time he took me with him to call on old Reynard Weber.
Sour grapes.
Precisely. Now, that is the great emotional core of that story, is that longing for the glory days of House Osprey and, simultaneously the glory days of House Blackfire.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, question number 3 was, who was the Hedge Knight with the snail on his shield who defeated Dunk at the tourney, but later revealed he'd been paid to kill Dunk and had failed intentionally because the offered price was not enough of a bribe to get him to kill. And that Hedge Knight was Sir Uthor Underleaf.
Yeah, that's the one I probably wouldn't have gotten. I didn't remember that name. Again, I think the last time I read The Sworn Sword was probably when the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms came out. So, yeah, it's a good question. If you got that, props to you. I wouldn't have gotten that shit. Here's the passage from the Mystery Knight where he tells Dunk the truth of the outcome of their tilt. Are you so blind you cannot see your danger? Do you know why I stuck you? Why I struck you where I did, sir? He got to his feet and touched Dunk lightly in the center of his chest. A coronal placed here would have put you on the ground just as quickly. The head is a smaller target. The blow is more difficult to land, though more likely to be mortal. I was paid to strike you there. 6 dragons tendered in advance. 4 more promised when you died. A paltry sum for a knight's life. Be thankful for that. Had more been offered, I might have put the point of my lance through your eye slit. Yes, indeed. And then our 4th question was, this Hedge Knight who appeared at White Walls and mysteriously vanished just before the royal army showed up to break up the party may have been more than he appeared, for half a point each. The name he went by at the wedding and his possible true identity. Last chance to get this easy question correct. The answer is Maynard Plum / Bloodraven, Brendan Rivers.
Yep, that's right. We hope you got that one. There are many clues that Maynard Plum is Bloodraven. Check out our Mystery Night episode for a full rundown. Here is one of the more revealing passages. It says, through the rain, all Dunk could make out was a hooded shape and a single white eye. It was only when the man came forward that the shadowed face beneath the cowl took on the familiar features of Sir Maynard Plum, the pale-eyed no more than the moonstone brooch that pinned his cloak at the shoulder. Of course, that language of the single eye and the paleness and that moonstone brooch, which might be part of his glamour, are your key hints there. And along with this one, indicating that Sir Maynard conveniently disappeared just before Lord Bloodraven arrived. They had looked for Sir Maynard to join them, but Plum had melted away sometime during the night. So, anyways, we hope you got that one. We didn't trick you. Now we'll move on to question 5. Over the course of the 3 stories, we see Duncan Egg riding a number of different horses and a donkey for a half a point each. Name 2 of their mounts. So we had 5 options, and you can name any 2 of them, any combination of Maester, Thunder, Sweetfoot, Chestnut, or Rain.
Thunder, of course, was Dunk's warhorse. Sweetfoot is the palfrey he sells in the Hedge Knight to finance his armor. Chestnut is the older stout he rode during his years as Sir Arlen's squire, who died on their journey to Dorne. Maester was given to them by Egg's brother Aemon, you may know from the main series, gifted to them in Old Town. And Rain is the horse given to Egg by Lady Rahan Weber. Honestly, the only one of those I probably would have guessed is Maester, just because I remember how adorable it is that Egg's daughter calls Aemon Uncle Maester. Moving on to question 6, that was the name of a town that appears in Arya's POV in the main series and has a prominent role in the opening scene of the Mystery Night, where Dunk and Egg see the head of a septon who was preaching against Bloodraven. And that town is, of course, Stony Sept, which we see in A Storm of Swords Arya 5, when she's brought there by the Brotherhood Without Banners. She visits the Peach, and it also shows up prominently in the memories of John Connington, who lost a crucial battle there, I should say, during Robert's Rebellion.
Yeah, I mean, you got the first words from the Mystery Night, which is a light summer rain was falling as Dunk and Egg took their leave of Stony Sept. And, they're pretty paranoid about Lord Bloodraven and his many eyes. So Dunk is pretty happy to leave this place once he realizes that the head on the spike over the gate is the septon they had heard preaching treason against the hand a few days previously. So, again, Bloodraven is one of those characters that's intentionally framed to be morally ambiguous in the story. You understand his motivations, his rationales, but at the same time, when he's kind of killing people for speaking their mind and, stringing their bodies up, you're kind of like, I don't know, that might not be for the best. I don't know. I'm not here to judge, though. I'm not here to judge Lord Bloodraven. Not that he's listening or watching right now, right? Right.
Just in case.
I'm a supporter of the Red Dragon, of course. So, our 7th question was, what is the location in the Reach that Dunk travels to in the Hedge Knight to take part in a young maid's name day tourney? The answer to this question, of course, is Ashford Meadow. So, Ashford Meadow, the tourney at Ashford. This is one of those gimme ones we referenced earlier, and it is a fantastic little location. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of narrative speaking, it is the first time in the narrative that we traveled to the Reach in both the main series and the Dunk and Egg. Well, obviously the first time in the Dunk and Egg novellas, but I believe we don't actually journey to the Reach in the main series until A Feast for Crows, I want to say.
We get one chapter there in A Clash of Kings. Renly's tourney is at Bitterbridge, but other than that, yeah.
The cat and Renly, yeah. But those were released at the same time, in the same year, and written kind of contiguously. So I think you're right on that it's very possible this was George's first dip into the Reach. So Ashford Meadow, again, in the Reach. Here is a description of the place when Dunk first arrives at the tourney there. It says, the shadows of the afternoon were growing long when Dunk reined up on the edge of broad Ashford Meadow. 80 pavilions had already risen on the grassy field. Some were small, some large, some square, some round, some of sailcloth, some of linen, some of silk, but all were brightly colored, with long banners streaming from their center poles, brighter than a field of wildflowers, with rich reds and sunny yellows, countless shades of green and blue, deep blacks and grays and purples. I love that quote. I love the descriptiveness of it. And actually, since we mentioned the cat at Bitterbridge, I think that there's a lot of similarities between what Cat sees when she gets to Bitterbridge and this here, what Dunk sees when he gets to Ashford.
Yeah, the riot of colors. Renly's got the Rainbow Guard and all the bright banners he loves so much, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting to think about George writing those two things kind of contiguously, as they were released in the same year. So we're going to move on to question 8, which was another location question. Is the castle famed for its walls of white stone imported from the Vale and its weirwood roof rafters, built using the fortune of its owners, which had been made from cows? What is the name of this place? White Walls.
Yes, indeed. White Walls was built by Lord Ambrose Butterwell's grandfather while he was hand to Egan IV. White Walls was famously extravagant and, due to the events of the Mystery Night, almost as famously short-lived, so it's a white elephant befitting its color. Here's a description of the place. White Walls was almost new as castles went, having been raised a mere 40 years ago by the grandsire of its present lord. The small folk hereabouts called it the Milk House, for its walls and keeps and towers were made of finely dressed white stone, quarried in the Vale and brought over the mountains at great expense. Inside were floors and pillars of milky white marble veined with gold. The rafters overhead were carved from the bone-pale trunks of weirwoods. So, question 9, which Targaryen prince was it who assaulted Tansel Tuatal, who we were talking about in question 1, setting into motion the big trial in the Hedge Knight? And that, of course, is Aerion Targaryen, the Bright Prince, Aerion Brightflame, everyone's least favorite Targaryen. I think I'll just make that judgment.
I agree with that. And it's really cool. If you guys listen to A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the audiobook, it is voiced by Harry Lloyd, who reverts back to his Viserys Targaryen from season 1 of Game of Thrones whenever Aerion Brightflame.
Yes, do it.
You guys, I'm serious. If you've never listened to the audiobook, I do. Most of the time, I don't recommend audiobooks, although I'll go against some. There's some people that don't like Roy Dotrice, and you're wrong and ugly, and you should ask for forgiveness. He's great, but I think Harry Lloyd is really, really good because he becomes Viserys Targaryen in the form of Aerion Brightflame in the audiobook for the Hedge Knight, and it is fantastic. Really, really strongly recommend you guys get a piece of that if you could. So the passage from the Hedge Knight is, in the midst of it all stood Prince Aerion resplendent in a red velvet doublet with long daggett sleeves, twisting Tansel's arm in both hands. She was on her knees, pleading with him. Aerion ignored her. He forced her a hand and seized one of her fingers. Dunk stood there stupidly, not quite believing what he saw. Then he heard a crack, and Tansel screamed. So that is our Aerion, our very, very bright prince. Very, very good. Bright equals good, right, in the story, if I'm not mistaken.
Dirtbag.
Lady Gwen speaks the truth, as always. So our 10th question is, in the Mystery Night, Lord Butterwell proudly displays his family's dragon egg until it disappears the morning after his wedding. Near the end of the story, Dunk figures out who stole it and how. For half a point each, who stole the dragon egg, and how did they enter Lord Butterwell's heavily guarded chamber? So, as we find out at the end of the Mystery Night, it is the dwarves who are likely in the employ of Lord Brynden Rivers, that is the Blood Raven, who steal up through the privy shaft to come in and steal Lord Butterwell's egg. So that is actually Blood Raven, and it's a really cool little scene there. I think it's really interesting that we have Blood Raven employing kind of the outcasts of society as his kind of spies. I think it's really a cool motif we have going for Blood Raven. Very similar, as we come to find out, in A Game of Thrones. Well, more in the Dance with Dragons, but very similar to what Varys does in employing children, especially those with their tongues cut out, but able to read and write, people who wouldn't be overlooked by the nobility of Westeros. So I think it's a really interesting Varys-like touch that we're seeing in Bloodraven.
Yes, I definitely agree with you about all of that. And, it was actually Bloodraven himself who answered Egg's question about how on earth the dragon's egg had been stolen, telling him, were I to guess, I'd say someone climbed up inside the privy shaft. But then it was Detective Dunk who remembered the privy-like smell that he'd noticed emanating from one of the performing dwarfs, and put two and two together when Egg objected that the privy shaft was too small. Bloodraven said maybe it was a child, and Dunk said, or a dwarf. 1,000 eyes in one. Why shouldn't some of them belong to a troupe of comic dwarfs? Indeed. So that was a nice way for Bloodraven to repo that dragon's egg, which probably never should have left the possession of House Targaryen. In addition to putting down a rebellion, or a potential rebellion, he got that precious piece of family treasure back. So I like it. Question 11 now had to do with another lady who is always in Dunk's thoughts. This one is a redhead that Dunk took a souvenir from at the end of the Sworn Sword. Who is she? And please tell me that we all knew this was Rohan Weber.
I'll tell you, that's one of the most romantic moments in A Song of Ice and Fire is her granting Dunk a piece of her hair. I mean, people talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, as Emmett and I have talked about in the NotaCast, as being very grimdark and anything can happen and it's so dark and nihilistic, but it can't be both nihilistic and dark, as well as having Rohan Weber giving Dunk some of her red hair as a souvenir/gift to remember her by. So there's a romantic undertone that Martin infuses in Duncan Egg stories as well as in A Song of Ice and Fire proper.
Yes, indeed. Even though she has to, of course, marry Sir Eustace to prevent her castle from falling to the hands of her greedy cousin. But she gets that lock of hair and feels very much like the Galadriel-Gimli connection from The Lord of the Rings.
Except that it's her whole braid, and I just wonder, how on earth did she explain that to Sir Eustace? Like, she comes back with, like, a brand new short haircut, and he's like, what happened?
He got caught in the branch. What's he gonna do about it? So, moving on to question 12. One of the first characters we see in the Hedge Knight, this brown-haired lordling who was passed out in a puddle of wine but has a secret identity, and turns out to be Prince Daeron Targaryen, Daeron the Drunkard as he is known, one of the dreamers of House Targaryen, who is the eldest son of Prince later King Maekar and the older brother of Egg, who was his squire at the beginning of the Hedge Knight, but he abandoned, so he runs off with Dunk.
Absolutely. We have that quote from the Hedge Knight, which is, a young lordling in a fine damask mantle was passed out at one table, snoring softly into a pool of spilled wine. So that is Prince Daeron Targaryen, Daeron the Drunkard, Daeron the Dreamer, too. So his dreams always come true, and as we know from the Hedge Knight, his dream did come true, of course, but of course, because it's George R. R. Martin and A Song of Ice and Fire, it came true in a very particular way, not necessarily the way that perhaps the participants in the tourney thought was going to unfold. So our 13th question was, what future career path is heavily foreshadowed in Sir Duncan's story as it's related in the stories we have to date? So, as you guys all well know, if you've read The World of Ice and Fire, you know that Sir Duncan the Tall becomes a member of the Kingsguard and actually becomes Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. So both answers are acceptable. Both of them are foreshadowed in the first three books, in the first three novellas in Duncan Egg. So, hand a little hand clap to you. If you've read The World of Ice and Fire, you really should. Everyone really should, or at least buy it for the pretty pictures, at the very least, because there's a fantastic picture of Sir Duncan the Tall when he's Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, which I will not spoil for you if you have not read it, but you should read it. You really should.
Yes. Yep. So just there's so many. These things are not so much hints because, like you said, Jeff, we know that he's going to be the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, or we assume that most people who are reading Duncan Egg already have that knowledge. So they're more like clever little nods. Sir Eustace Osprey gives Dunk a white cloak in the Sword and Sword. John the Fiddler dreams of him being in Kingsguard white in the Mystery Knight. But then Dunk says things and thinks things like, if all the other knights in the realm should die, I'd be Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. And you have as much chance of wearing a white cloak as I do, is what he said to Glendon Ball. So it's all laid out pretty clearly. What we actually know is in store for him. I just think they're clever little, nods for the reader, which is one of the wonderful things about Duncan Egg. There's lots of that sort of thing. So, question 14 was, what is the stated destination of Duncan Egg at the end of the Sword and Sword and beginning of the Mystery Knight? I talked about this a lot in the Sword and Sword episode at the end. We talked about the story that one day, if we're very lucky, we will have that's going to take place at this location. And the reasons why Dunk wants to go to this particular place are actually turn out to be very sweet and personal. So they are heading for the Wall, or we'll also accept Winterfell to take service with Baron Stark.
Indeed, Dunk tells Maynard Plum, Egg and I have a long journey before us. We're headed north to Winterfell. Lord Baron Stark is gathering swords to drive the Krakens from his shores for good. So at one point, the storyline was supposed to be contained within the story tentatively titled The She-Wolves of Winterfell. That's been tabled and shifted around a couple times, but it's supposed to involve some level of these Stark succession struggles in Winterfell that have been alluded to before, and maybe involve possible liaisons for Dunk, as Bran might have seen in a certain flashback in A Dance with Dragons. But as Lady Gwen says, she's talked about that at length before, and that's always a fun topic for the fandom to dissect, as where that storyline might be headed. So, finally, we have question number 15, which was about Sir Eustace reminiscing about the past glories of his house, and what was the name of that one member of House Osprey who's famously turned back an invading Lannister army. He has both a full name and a nickname, either one of which is acceptable. His nickname is the Little Lion, and his actual given name is Wilbert Osprey.
Yeah, it's a fun little epithet that's granted towards Wilbert Osprey, and that is a question that I would not have gotten if I were taking this quiz. Again, I suck at trivia. Don't ever put me on your trivia team, because I would suck. There is a fantastic quote there where we have Osprey, where we have that little line being explained, which is, quote, "Yet it happened that while King Giles was away, the King of the Rock saw his chance to tear a bite out of the reach. So he gathered up a host of Westermen and came down upon us. The Ospreys were the marshals of the North March, so it fell to the Little Lion to meet them. It was the fourth King Lancel who led the Lannisters, it seems to me, or mayhaps the fifth. Sir Wilbert blocked King Lancel's path and bid him halt. 'Come no farther,' he said. 'You are not wanted here. I forbid you to set foot upon the reach.'"
Yeah, so, earlier Emmett mentioned the parallel between, the sentimentality that Sir Eustace has for the history of House Osprey and his sentimentality for, the Blackfires and actually the action of what's happening in the Sword and Sword. And there is this great moment when they have the showdown at the river where the sort of deciding battle, or where the deciding sword fight will take place between Dunk and Lucas Longinch, where Sir Eustace says to Lady Rohan, "Come no farther, you are not wanted here. I forbid you to set foot upon my lands." So there's a great little, parallel within that story that, gosh, I really like Sir Eustace. As kind of dopey as he is. He's
a very rich character. Probably, he's one of the Duncan Egg characters who feels rich enough to be in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Definitely.
For sure. He's my favorite traitor in all of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Well, that's something.
Well, I hope he enjoyed his twilight years as the husband for Lady Rohan. Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Really, who wouldn't? So, lucky guy there. It all worked out for him. And I hope it all worked out for you listeners. That was our 15 questions. So we are bringing this quiz to a conclusion. Let us know how you all did. And I want to thank you guys, Jeff and Emmett, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on and being with me today. And why don't you take a few minutes now to, let us know about NotaCast and, where to find you and what you guys are up to.
Okay, well, the NotaCast podcast is a weekly chapter-by-chapter podcast going through a Song of Ice and Fire, well, one chapter a week, like I just said. And primarily what we do is we do literary analysis, theory discussion, theory development, foreshadowing, all the different things that Martin likes to embed in these chapters. So at the moment, as we're recording this, we are actually just about to record our episode on A Game of Thrones Catelyn 8. So we are getting towards the end of A Game of Thrones, and we're about to progress into A Clash of Kings. And Emmett and I, as loyal bannermen to King Stannis, not Lord Stannis, are very excited to get to the Clash of Kings prologue, which is only going to be, what do we say, Emmett, like about 25 episodes long or so for the Clash prologue?
I'm really worried about the episode on the Clash prologue, because even putting aside Stannis, you've got Dragonstone and Melisandre, and we could spend the whole time talking about Patchface. Patchface is weird enough to talk about for a whole episode. So I'm worried about that episode.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, it's a big one. We're actually working on something with that ourselves. Ours will not be 25 episodes long. So, but we look forward to hearing about that from you guys.
Absolutely. So you can listen to the NotaCast on Podbean, on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Acast, anywhere you listen to your fine podcasts. You can hit us up on Twitter at NotaCastASOIAF or shoot us an email at NotaCastASOIAF@gmail.com. Check out our Patreon also at patreon.com/NotaCastASOIAF. Patrons get special episodes we do at least once a month on various topics. They get early releases of our regular episodes, show notes, a whole bunch of great things, so check that out. Personally, you can hit me up at Port Quentin on Twitter.
And I'm at Brenda B. Fish on Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to the future for you guys. Like you said, you're entering year 2. And have you figured out how many chapters there are and how long that actually takes you?
It's about 450 chapters in total in A Song of Ice and Fire, from prologue to dance epilogue. And we assume by 2024, 2025, when we get to A Dance with Dragons, that the Winds of Winter will be out, because of course it's coming out next week. Right. So or the week after, right. Either next week or the week after. So hopefully we'll have the Winds of Winter out by 2025, right?
Hopefully, by the time you... we always used to think that we were going to have the Winds of Winter before the fandom started clamoring for our Tyrion episode, but here we are, 6 years later. And so, well, anyways, thank you guys for being here. Really super appreciate it, and I wish you the best of everything. Thank you to everyone out there listening. Like I said, let us know how you did. And I'll be back soon with another regular episode of Radio Westeros. Bye for now.